Inshallah for the soul of Sheikh Mufti Hamid Umar Ismail. Let's recite a Fatiha. Actually, he is one individual that he also, again, had love and respect for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. So he passed away yesterday, and so let's recite a Surah Fatiha. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين الحمد لله الأول فلا شيء قبله والآخر فلا شيء بعده والظاهر فلا شيء فوقه والباطن فلا شيء دونه والحمد لله على كل حال وصل اللهم على سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I give my condolences to each of you on the occasion which we have come to commemorate the shahadat of Imam Hussein, his Ahlul Bayt, and his companions. Alayhim afdal salatu wassalam. The discussion which we began and inshallah will continue throughout these nights of Muharaam is the status and role of women in Islam. And alhamdulillah, I think it has brought about some very fruitful discussions because it is an issue that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He addressed the Prophet of Allah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and all of our Imma alayhim salatu wasalam, that they addressed in their life. It is an issue that, again, still exists. But as we mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given us the best of guidance. In the Prophet of Allah and in the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam, we have the best example. They have set, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and by the example of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu, they have set a standard. And this is one of the things that, again, after yesterday's majlis, there was a pretty lengthy discussion. But just to kind of just summarize those things which, again, it should be clear, and I saw that, there were some discussions on it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He set a standard for us. And that standard is observed in the life of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. With regards to the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that he is uswatun hasana. He is the best model, the best example that lives that status or that criterion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets. So that criterion is here, but unfortunately most of mankind, we are here. We're at a much lower place. And we have to get there. We have to strive to, again, achieve that status or that maqam, and at least if you're talking about it according to on the spiritual side or spiritual dimension, maqam al-mahmud. So their status is here, or the criterion is here, but unfortunately most people, they start at a very low point, and we have to get there. And what takes us to there, on one hand, is, again, changing our perception and understanding of how we, again, our own selves, about our own selves, our personal life and personal, again, affairs, and our interpersonal affairs, how we deal with and how we treat other people. So first and foremost, we have to change the way we perceive these things. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sets laws, parameters, that at the very least, if they are observed, then again, you're within that folds. But unfortunately, sometimes, and this is, again, where some of the discussion went, well, this is in the law, or that is in the law, this is in the Sharia. So yes, these things are in the Sharia, but they're there in order to make sure, it's a safety net, that one does not fall below that. That at least maintain this standard and aim for higher. Not understand that, well, Sharia permits this, and so therefore we'll keep that standard, and that's fine. Somewhat similar to one encounter I had some time ago. So one brother was doing some things, and he was kind of a friend, friend of everyone's. We were a bunch of young guys at the time, still young, alhamdulillah. But we were discussing an issue. So then his point of view on it, oh, you know what? Oh, it's just makruh. We can do this. It's not a problem. It's just makruh. And so is he within the parameters of the law? Yes. It's makruh. He's doing something that is not haram, whereby he will be punished for it. It's not something that is recommended or wajib or obligatory, whereby he will gain reward. No. Something that is not like, but he won't be punished for it. But it is this type of mindset as well that the Prophet of Allah and the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdhalu wasalam, they warned against. They said that if you consider something, oh, well, it's just makruh, he says this is a precursor to actually going even further than that, doing what is haram. Person may not do it, but they're going in that direction. Likewise, in the other direction, that yes, doing things which are recommended, which are mustahab, is going in a direction of fulfilling your obligation and making sure that you're fulfilling your duty towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and actually striving beyond that. But if you only do that which is incumbent upon you, obligatory upon you, then yes, you'll be fine. As the one Bedouin, he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he asked Rasulullah, he says that, okay, I believe La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And what you want from me is simply to pray 5 times a day. You want me to fast in Ramadan, make Hajj once a year. And if you call me to defend the Muslim lands, then I come to defend that, and I give my zakat. He says, this is what you want from me? Rasulullah said, yes, this is what the Sharia says. And then this Bedouin, he says, then I will do only that. I won't do more, nor will I do less. And the Prophet of Allah, he looked at him, he says, وَلَكَ Jannah. And if you did that, then yes, you will have paradise. But for that person, what level of paradise? Paradise has different levels. Yes, he will make it into paradise if he did that. Or if we did that, only what is obligatory, only what our duty is, that we observe what is obligatory upon us and we abstain from that which is haram. You'll get paradise. Not a problem. But if you, again, go above and beyond that, this is when that paradise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He explains the Jannatul Firdaus, the different levels of paradise, or entering into paradise without any hisab. So likewise, as we were mentioning about the again, the rights of the wife and the husband, or we didn't really talk about those, but just part of it was discussed. That if those things are observed, then yes, one would be fulfilling his or her duty. But that is, again, the bare minimum in those duties that are outlined. And the criterion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set was with that mawadda and rahmah, that love and compassion. The example that is set in Rasulullah, the example that we see in Amir al-Mu'mineen, in Fatima, in Khadija, the example we see in Zainab, that is at that level. So they are uswa. They're that model for us to see that what is that standard. Just as we mentioned that, again, yes, that part of the Sharia that, okay, you take those stages to try to defuse and de-escalate differences within your household. You speak to your spouse and, okay, well, I'm just going to remind you to do better. You remind me to do better. That doesn't work and you're getting upset, walk away. And the most unfortunate thing is the last part. It's just, okay, if you hit them. But then there's parameters there. But your model is Rasulullah. Our model is Rasulullah. Our model is the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. This is the standard that we should be living by. And in those discussions, and inshallah we can carry on those discussions a little bit later, because there are more dimensions than just simply this aspect of a woman being a wife and it being something as an honor. Unfortunately, because the perception is skewed, then you find women who say, oh, well, I don't want to be known as a wife. Or I don't want to be known as a mother. But because the perception of motherhood, the perception of, again, being a wife, it is skewed in the minds of people. Then we find those who are advocating for women's rights, then they get, these ideas become that, this is not how we should be fine. Not as Mrs., but as Miss. You can't tell whether I'm married or not. This understanding, or this, you could say, movement of women, one of the things that they look at is, again, this idea and the concept of power or power struggle between, again, men and women. A power struggle against the institutions that have been established within society. And some, again, according to some of them, he says for a very long time it's been patriarchal. Even some of the women who write today, they say even the current system that we have, again, mostly capitalism, socialism, democracy, they say, oh, all of these are patriarchal movements. And women have been contained within them. So they said, oh, well, we have to break out of this mold and break out of this understanding and begin to define ourselves by the contributions that they make, their struggles to transform the relationships and transform society in itself. So again, their identity is based on, again, what they contribute to society, that what they actually shape. So they say, well, capitalism, democracy, most of these ideas and concepts have been shaped by men, and they've defined it. And within that, we're defined within that. So no, we have to define our own role in that, you can say, social struggle, that social institution, and developing it. And this is something that also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He addresses in the Quran. Conceptually, again, in the Meccan verses, and then putting things forth in the law, in the Madani verses, that what is the woman's role also within the society? And how should we understand her contribution? With regards to the perception, and this is, again, to some extent you could say the normal perception, or what has been a normative perception of many as well. And this is in the story of Fir'aun. And there are several places where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions this story, the story of Musa and Fir'aun, and how the Pharaoh, again, he wanted to control the society. What was his method of controlling the society? If you look in Surah A'raf, again, which is a Meccan verse 127, actually 127, 128, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states, وَقَالَ الْمَلَأُ مِنْ قَوْمِ فِرْعَوْنَ أَتَّذَرُ مُوسَى وَقَوْمَهُ لِيُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَيَذْرُكَ وَآلِهَتَكَ وَقَالَ سَنُقَتِّلُ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ وَنَسْتَحْيِي نِسَاءَهُمْ وَإِنَّا فَوْقَهُمْ قَاهِرُونَ. Says that, again, the chieftains, the advisors of the Pharaoh came to him. He says, hey, are you going to allow Musa and his people, you're going to allow them to create mischief in the earth? You're going to allow them to, again, disregard, you and your gods? So the Pharaoh says, okay, I have a plan for them. How will I subdue them? I will subdue them by killing their sons, killing the men, and leaving the women alive. And he says, وَإِنَّا فَوْقَهُمْ قَاهِرُونَ. And by doing this, then we will subdue them. That whatever we want to do with these people, then, again, we can do. Why? Because who is left? Only the women. These women are left. And then, again, in the perception, or at least what the perception is of the Pharaohs, they're weak. They're not going to oppose me. They're not going to oppose my authority and power and might. Again, you see where the perception is skewed, that, the women are weak. They cannot rise up. They cannot oppose us. But in verse 128, Musa, he gives the formula, again, to change the perception. The concept and the perception must change. So Musa, he says, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says about Musa, قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ اسْتَعِينُوا بِاللَّهِ وَاصْبِرُوا إِنَّ الْأَرْضَ لِلَّهِ يُورِثُهَا مَن يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So Musa, he says, be patient and seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. So patience and relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, will be the counter, or you can say the counter revolution, or the counter, or the opposition to the Pharaoh's plan. Likewise, in Surah Qasas, that's chapter 28 of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, indicating on this story of Musa, or the Pharaoh's plot, where he says, إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ عَلَى فِي الْأَرْضِ وَجَعَلَ أَهْلَهَا شِيَعًا يَسْتَضْعِفُ طَائِفَةً مِّنْهُمْ يُذَبِّحُ أَبْنَاءَهُم وَيَسْتَحْيِي نِسَاءَهُم إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, explaining and clarifying exactly what the Pharaoh was plotting. He says that the Pharaoh has exalted himself in the earth, and he has made a group of people his followers. Again, by force, because he was a tyrant. So he made them his followers. How did he do this? يَسْتَضْعِفُ طَائِفَةً مِّنْهُمْ. He made a group of people weak. How did he make them weak? He made them weak by slaughtering their sons. وَاسْتَحْيِي نِسَاءَهُم. And giving life to their women. إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. This is an actual example that happened in the story of Karbala. Where and when? This happened. This killing also here, يُذَبِّهُ أَبْنَاءَهُم, it's not a physical killing, but it killed the determination, killed the iman, killed the resolve of the men in Kufa. Because they're the ones who wrote to Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. They were ready to stand with Imam Hussein. Muslim ibn Aqil, he came, he gathered the people, they were, again, in droves. They were coming out that, no, we don't want to live under the oppression that we see that's coming up by Yazid. So what did Yazid do? He sent Ibn Ziyad to Kufa to rule. And what did Ibn Ziyad do? Again, pay very close attention. You see how he sacrificed the men and left the women alive or in power. Ibn Ziyad, he went to the tribes. And who did he go to in the tribe? He went to the women. He gathered all the women, the chieftain women of the tribe. He says, listen, the army from Syria is coming. So if you want to spare your men, your husbands and your sons, then you bring their arms, bring their weapons. And I'll even top it off. And this is what Ibn Ziyad did. He says, when they bring their weapons, I will give them gold in exchange for their weapons. So the women went back, slaughtered the iman, slaughtered the resolve, slaughtered the sense of justice among the men. And one of those men, again, was not, again, by his mother wasn't told, the son of Toa. Although she was on the other side, she says, no, you have to remain steadfast. But in the other tribes, most of them, the women came back or had their men coming and submitting their swords, their weapons to Ibn Ziyad. In turn, he gave them gold. He gave them silver. He gave them positions within the city. And then when it was time to go fight Imam Hussein, he says, well, you know what? Have them to come back, get their weapons, and I will pay them again, but they have to fight in our army. The women went back again, told them, hey, go get your weapons, but the condition is that you have to stand with Ibn Ziyad and Ibn al-Assad. You have to stand in their army. So again, the concept and the idea is the same. That the women were left alive. The women were used in order to slaughter the men. The Pharaoh himself, he went forth actually to slaughter the men and to leave the women alive. But again, the same concept. This is, again, getting us to understand and perceive that what is the status, what is the role of women, and how do we perceive them? How are they perceived in society? And again, and that is a society of kufr. That the women will be left alive, or the women are perceived as weak. And if they're the weak link, then we use them to, again, to take control over the people. But likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, changing the perception that is this the nature of women? And some say, again, this is something that many people perceive, oh, well, because women are, they are weaker than men, then, they don't do this or they don't do that. No. That perception, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He also addresses in the Quran when, on one hand, He talks about, again, in that same household of Pharaoh. In Surah Al-Qasas, verse 9, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَقَالَ امْرَأْتُ فِرْعَوْنَ قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ لَا تَقْتُلُوهُ عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. So here's a woman in the house of Pharaoh. Again, Pharaoh, he made the intentions. No, I'm going to kill the men. I'm going to kill all of those boys. Again, so that prophecy will not happen. So if he is going to kill them, he has determined this, but here's a woman who has faith. who has at least some sense of, again, decency as well. And we know that then she became one of the supporters and followers of the Prophet Musa. She's one of those 5 women, they say, one of the 5 great women of Islam. So here, she is not a woman of weakness. She's a woman of determination. She says, if you want to kill these, well, this one you're not going to kill. The Pharaoh's the king. He's the ruler. He says, no. She says, no. This one, no. You're not going to kill. I will take him in, and he will be beloved by me, and perhaps beloved by you as well. So again, she's showing strength. In another place, we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'll just give the reference, and again, later you can go there. The story of Bilqis. The story of Bilqis in Surah An-Naml, where Sulaiman, again, his people, his army comes across Bilqis. He says, she's a woman, she has power, she rules, she's a ruler. He didn't say anything, nor did Allah say anything about, she can't be ruling. The only issue was that, they're prostrating to the sun. That was the issue, that they didn't have a proper perspective of faith. The issue wasn't with her ruling. The issue wasn't with, she has a kingdom, and hey, I'm Sulaiman, I'm a man, I'm a prophet. Should be my kingdom. No. In fact, even Bilqis had, again, in the story, I don't have time to go through the whole story, but even in that story, Bilqis, she tested him. She says, he's claiming this, but most, and in the Quran it says, but most men when they come, or most kings when they come, they just want land. They just want to take over. So she tested him to give him gifts and this and that. He didn't want anything. He says, no, believe in Allah. Submit to Allah. He says, these things, worldly things, he said, you keep them. And from that, she realized that, his claim is true then. He's not coming to, again, strip me of my kingdom, to strip me of my status, but he's come to deliver me to salvation. So again, she maintained her status. And this was also one of the questions that came in. Kind of interesting question. So the discussion yesterday after speaking about, how to interact with one's wife. And so someone asked, it was like, what about the house husbands? Do they have rights? Yeah, we're laughing that, the house husband, and actually in 2014, they said that about 2 million, this is, I think, 2 million men have become house husbands in the year 2014. Part of it has also started during the Great Depression. They said that this is also one of the times that, again, house husbands or stay-at-home dads became kind of popular. Why? Because the economy was bad. When the economy went bad, then businesses, they didn't want to hire men. They didn't want to hire men. Because we're going to have to pay them more. At least, again, the perception is wrong. The men's labor is going to be more. We have to pay them more. Even there's a problem still today. We have to pay them more. So guess what? We want to get cheap labor. How do we get cheap labor? We hire the women because we'll pay them less. Even today, in today's world, they say, a man and a woman, they both have the same qualifications. Let's hire her. We can pay her less. If we hire the man, he's going to object and he's going to want more. Again, this is because the perception is wrong about women. And no time to go into the discussion. It's sometime later. But again, just put this question in your mind. Well, look at Rasulullah. What did Rasulullah do? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Because when we compare the wealth of Khadija and the wealth of Rasulullah, there was no comparison. The entire ummah of Islam in its beginning was held afloat by who? By Khadija, not by Rasulullah. Rasulullah didn't have her. What did Rasulullah do? Even to the point that, unfortunately, again, because our perception is wrong, again, some time back I came across a couple where, again, both the husband and wife was working, and the wife was making more than the husband. Made him feel uncomfortable. So then she was like, oh, well, I don't want him to feel uncomfortable. She quit her job and then found something that paid less. Why? Again, the perception is incorrect. Again, the prophet, he is the uswa, he is the model. Again, his wife is wicked, has much more wealth than him. And how do they live together? Again, today's world we say, oh, well, if his wife is making more, he's not wearing the pants in the house. So she's wearing the pants. She's going to tell him what to do. But again, even if she is, again, where is the standard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set? If she is making more. The standard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set is in mawadda and rahmah. Not simply because you're making more, you say, no, mawadda and rahmah. Because the objective is to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallallahu alayhi Muhammad wa Again, these are just side issues that, again, maybe at some other time we will open up and we will discuss. But to go back to our understanding. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He shows us in the Quran that yes, one of the perception about women is that, okay, they're weak, they're perhaps a weak link, and if the powers that be, if we can control them, or get them to slaughter the faith and sense of justice of their men, then we will control those people. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He shows that no, there are women who are strong. And those who are strong, their strength, and the criterion of their strength is what? Their iman. Musa told his people, he says that have patience and rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The strength of Bilqis, again, because her physical strength of her army, I'm speaking about her army, would have been no match for Sulaiman. But her strength was in her understanding of her iman. He says, oh, she tested Sulaiman. So, oh, well, yeah, he's truthful, so, okay, I will embrace this faith. He's not coming just to take my kingdom, take my power, but he wants to change my understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of God. And in that was her strength and power. In the Madani verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He puts this in perspective, and again, He puts parameters in the Sharia, that, again, the strength of women, where does it lie? And how, again, that they are a critical and essential part of a society, of a community. And their strength is also important. And that strength, just like the strength of men, is again based on their iman and their sense of justice and duty and responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states in Surah An-Nisa, again, the chapter of women, verse 135, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe. And again, women are believers as well. This is not only addressing men. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawamin bil qist shuhada'a lillah. So if you have belief, you have faith, you have iman, be those individuals who establish justice, men and women alike. Be those who are testifying and witnessing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, witnessing to justice. وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ الْوَالِدَيْنَ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. Even if you have to testify towards justice against yourselves, against your parents, and against your close relatives. That you have to be that symbol of justice, men and women. And therein we see the strength lies in this movement of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. Yes, absolutely, as someone said, in Hazrat Zainab salamullah alayha, but she's an example that we see and that we know. But I want to talk about some of the women that don't get spoken about often, or many people don't know. But again, the strength laden these women. One of them is Dilham bint Amr. This is the wife of Zuhair ibn Qayn. And Imam Hussein, on his journey towards Karbala, again, he was going towards Karbala. Zuhair ibn Qayn, they were going in the other directions towards Medina, Mecca. And they happened to stop near the same resting place. And Imam Hussein noticed that, oh, this is the tent of Zuhair ibn Qayn. So he sent a message that Zuhair, come, I want to speak with you. The messenger came, gave the message, but Zuhair, he sat. And even he was thinking at one point that, what am I going to do? Because he knew what was to happen. He knew of the prophecy. He knew that Imam Hussein would go towards Karbala and he would be martyred there. It was his wife who looked at him and says, Zuhair? He says, what are you doing? Did not the grandson of Rasulullah call you? And he says, why are you sitting here? And he told her, he said that I know what is going to happen. She says, I know too. But this is the grandson of Rasulullah. You have to go. She says, I don't want to see you here. Again, this is the strength of the woman. That type of strength that, again, sense of justice, sense of duty, that yes, you must go, Zuhair. Again, giving him support in his iman. This is the mawadda and rahmah that is sought from us. This is what we see between Imam Hussein and Rubab in that poetry. Another woman, similar type of strength, again, it's not talked about. Maria bint Munqidh al-Abadi. Subhanallah. Maria bint Munqidh al-Abadi. And she is a woman from Basra. And her house was the house, you could say, of the revolution from Basra. Just as the house of Fatima salamullah alayha in Medina after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the house in which the objection came to the authority that, again, what they're doing is wrong. Maria bint Munqidh al-Abadi. She gathered the Shia there when she heard that this is going on, that Imam Hussein would be heading to Karbala. Gathered the people. Among those individuals who gathered in her home, in her house, was Sept ibn Malik al-Abadi al-Basri. Again, perhaps her cousin, again, who stood and he sacrificed himself for Imam Hussein. And just as that verse says in Surah An-Nisa, that be one who establishes justice. Be the one who is a witness for justice, even if it is against yourselves, your parents, your forefathers, or your relatives. Again, tonight we heard one of the names of Munqidh al-Abadi. Murrah, the one who pierced Ali Akbar's chest with a spear. He was also Murrah ibn Munqidh al-Abadi, al-Abdi. But Maria bint Munqidh al-Abadi and Sept ibn Malik al-Abadi, again, all from the same tribe, they bore witness against their relative who stood on the other side, on the wrong side. But tonight, we're not going to speak about the Shahadat of Sept. I want to speak about, and we should remember the Shahadat of a beloved individual in Karbala. A person whose name is exactly what it means, Habib. Habib means dear one. Habib means beloved one. And quite often in Arabic, when you speak to a friend, you call that friend Habib, a Habibi. Dusti ko dawam bakhsha hai. Habib ibn Mudahir, he was a friend of Imam Hussein since his youth. He knew Imam Hussein for a long time. They were friends. And this is one of the one persons that, according to some of the Maqtal, that Zainab salamullah alayha, she says that there's no doubt I know Habib will be here. Yes, he was from Kufa. Kufa had been cut off. The people were not being allowed to come out, but she says, no doubt, Habib will be here. He is the friend of Imam Hussein. Dusti ko devam bakhsha hai. Ishq ik nizam bakhsha hai. Jaan de kar Habib ne shah par. Khud ko a'la maqam bakhsha hai. This is Habib, the beloved of Karbala. As one of the poets he also wrote, very beautiful as well. Ya Habib, tu Habib Karbala'i, ham safr ba ma bino ke neizha'i. That Habib, that he's such a good friend, that he is my beloved. He is the beloved of Karbala. Habib is such a good friend and companion that even on the top of spears, he companioned me. He was my companion towards Sham. There were a couple of moments in the life of Habib in Karbala, subhanAllah, that if we really understood what was going on. One is that he understood the maqam of a woman. Which woman? Zainab salamullah alayha. That as Habib, he came towards the battlefield of Karbala. He was coming. He had fought his way out of Kufa just to make it to the plains of Karbala to be with Imam Hussein. And when he was coming from a distance, Zainab salamullah alayha, she saw that someone is coming. She asked, who is this who is coming? Who's approaching? And someone said, they looked at, they said, this is Habib ibn Mudahir. So she sent a message. Some say that messenger was Ali Akbar. She said, Iqra'u salami. Iqra'u. Give him my salams. جاي من زينب سلام ومدمع بالحال سال واقبل السلام على الحوراء وعلى ذيك العيال. Said when Habib, he heard this, that Zainab salamullah alayha, that she is giving him salam. He said he approached and he began to hit his head. He took his amama off. Some say that he took dirt and threw on his head. He says, Man akun, that who am I that Zainab is giving me salams? The daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that she's sending salam for me. That who am I? What have I done? He understood the maqam of Zainab salamullah alayha. The maqam of this woman. Another moment in the life of Habib in Karbala was right before he was martyred. Again, this is Habib Karbala, Habib Hussein. You want to know that how much Habib, he loved Imam Hussein? What drove him upon the battlefield of Karbala? They said it that when it was close to the time of Dhuhr, it's close to the time of Dhuhr, and then Habib went forth just to ask a request that will you, to the army of Umar ibn Sa'd, says, will you stop the war just for a few seconds and allow us to pray? Allow Imam Hussein to pray. And what was the response from that side? It says, why they're praying? Yusallu? Hussein ibn Ali, yusalli? That Hussein is going to pray? لا تقبل صلاته. That his salat will not be accepted. They said that this burned the heart of Habib ibn Madahir. He says that you will pray and your prayer will be accepted, but the grandson of Rasulullah, you saying his prayer will not be accepted? They said that at that point, Habib ibn Madahir, he rushed out onto the battlefield. He was saying, Ana Habib wa Abi Madahir. He says, I am Habib and my father is Madahir. Habib ibn Madahir, they said he went out onto the field. Though he was an elderly man, he fought the battle of a lion. Habib ibn Madahir, but this elderly man, how much could he fight? How much could he fight? How much could he bear the thirst and the heat of Karbala? They said at one point, Habib, he had been struck and he was falling off of his horse. So he gave his salutations to Imam Hussein. Assalamu alayka ya مولاي السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. Imam Hussein, he rushed towards Habib. And like all of the shuhada, he took the head of Habib and he put it in his lap. Habib, this is one that if at that moment he would have talked, he would have realized, and he said that he had fulfilled the wasiyat of his brother Muslim ibn Usaja, his brother who, upon his death on the plains of Karbala, Habib had told him, he says that, is there any wasiyah that you have for me? He says that, I would take that wasiyah only if I knew that I would live, but I know that I will soon follow in your footsteps. But Muslim ibn Usaja, he looked at Habib. He says, وَصِيَّتِي أَن تَمُوتَ دُونَ هَذَا. My wasiyah to you, Habib, is that you sacrifice your life and do not allow any harm to come to Imam Hussein. Habib, he had filled this wasiyah on the plains of Karbala. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين